You saved for 3 years. You skipped vacations, you ate at home, you justified the expense because this wasn't just a bag. It was a lifelong investment. You paid the price of a used car for a piece of fashion history. But 6 months later, the edges are melting. The hardware is tarnishing, the stitching is fraying. Your lifelong investment suddenly looks less like heritage and more like mass production with a luxury logo. What happened to the luxury industry? For decades, we were sold a dream of European artisans, generational craftsmanship, and uncompromising quality. But behind the velvet ropes and the champagne service, a quiet revolution has taken place. The artisans have been replaced by accountants, the ateliers have become factories, and the dream has been replaced by a spreadsheet. This isn't just about a few bad batches. This is about what happens when the promise of luxury is slowly sacrificed for margins, scale, and growth. So how did the most prestigious brands in the world convince us to pay more for less? And when do we finally admit that the luxury promise is starting to look like a very expensive lie? To understand why a $3,000 bag is falling apart, we have to look at who actually owns it. Much of the luxury industry is no longer shaped primarily by families or passionate designers. It is shaped by massive, publicly traded conglomerates like LVMH and Kering. And when you are a publicly traded company, you have one master, the shareholder. Shareholders don't care about the perfect stitch. They don't care about the heritage of the house or the romance of the atelier. They care about endless, quarter-over-quarter growth. But how do you grow profits endlessly when you're selling physical goods? You have two options. You raise the price, or you lower the cost of production. The modern luxury industry decided to do both. They started quietly replacing some of the materials that made these bags special in the first place. Take Chanel, for example. Before 2008, the hardware on a classic Chanel flap bag was plated in real 24-karat gold. It was durable, it felt substantial, and it helped justify the exorbitant price tag. But in late 2008, they stopped. They switched to gold tone metal. The real gold content was gone. Whatever the business reason, the material promise changed, while the price kept climbing. And it's not just the hardware. In parts of the industry, customers and repair experts have noticed a similar shift: lighter materials, thinner linings, more coated finishes, and construction that doesn't always feel as substantial as the price suggests. The bags feel lighter, flimsier, and less substantial. They no longer always have that unmistakable weight of quality. They can feel hollow. Prada took it in a different direction. They built an entire marketing campaign around re-nylon, selling bags made of regenerated nylon and framing it as a sustainability revolution. And the story is more complicated than simply calling it good or bad. It may be innovative, and it may be more sustainable than traditional nylon, but it also proves how powerful the story has become. In modern luxury, the narrative around a material can become almost as valuable as the material itself. The sustainability story, the logo, the campaign, the feeling, all of it becomes part of what you are paying for. The accountants in the boardroom realized something terrifying. The logo could carry more and more of the value, sometimes even when the product itself started to feel less special. They realized they could sell the illusion of luxury without always providing the level of craft people thought they were paying for. And for a long time, they were right. But what about the craftsmanship? What about the Italian artisans working in sunlit Tuscan studios, passing down their skills from generation to generation? This is perhaps the biggest illusion of all. Under European country of origin rules, a product can often claim the country where its final substantial transformation took place. So, Made in Italy does not always tell you where every component came from, who made it, or how many hands touched it before the final stamp was added. And that matters, because when customers see Made in Italy, they imagine Tuscan workshops, skilled leather workers, tradition, ethics, and craft. But sometimes they are paying for a much more complicated supply chain than the romantic label suggests. And even when the bags are actually made in Italy, the reality can be far darker than the marketing suggests. In 2024, a Milan court placed LVMH's Dior manufacturing unit under judicial administration after an investigation uncovered that third-party suppliers near Milan were employing workers, often undocumented immigrants, in exploitative conditions. Workers were sleeping in the factories, working around the clock and being paid as little as €2 or €3 an hour. Safety devices on the machines had been removed to speed up production. The conditions were indistinguishable from fast fashion sweatshops. Court documents said a supplier charged Dior as little as €53 for a bag that later retailed for €2,600, and that is the part I find genuinely sad, because luxury was supposed to be the opposite of this. It was supposed to be slower, more careful, more human, the place where the hand still mattered. The artisan dream is not dead everywhere, but in parts of the industry it has been pushed dangerously far behind the machinery of margin, scale, and speed. The Made in Italy stamp, once a guarantee of quality and ethical labor, has too often been used as a marketing tool to justify obscene markups. It is a label that no longer always means what you think it means. It can be a geographic technicality, not a promise of excellence. But before we go further, we have to address the one brand that keeps coming up as the counter-argument: Hermès. Hermès is not perfect, but it proves another model is still possible. While many luxury giants were chasing scale, volume, and global expansion, Hermès went the other way. As of 2024, the company employs over 15,500 skilled artisans in France, with 74% of everything they make still produced in French workshops. A single Birkin takes a single artisan up to 25 hours to make by hand. They don't flood the market with endless collections. The scarcity may still be part of the strategy, but it is also connected to a genuinely controlled production model. And maybe that is why Hermès has become such an uncomfortable comparison. Not because it is flawless, but because it reminds us what luxury was supposed to feel like: slow, difficult, handmade, and almost irrationally careful. And the market is punishing the brands that chose volume over quality, while rewarding the one that chose restraint. In the first half of 2024, Hermès grew 15%, while LVMH declined, and Kering dropped 11%. By 2025, Hermès had overtaken LVMH as Europe's most valuable luxury group, a company that owns over 75 brands versus Hermès, which has just one. This matters because it proves the decline is a choice, not an inevitability. The boardrooms of LVMH and Kering didn't cheapen their products because they had to. They did it because shareholders demanded it. Hermès proves that choosing craft over volume is not only possible, it is, in the long run, more profitable. So what happens when you take the opposite approach, when you chase volume, speed, and the next quarterly report? In the past, a luxury house might release 2 main collections a year. Today, they are churning out pre-fall, cruise, resort, spring-summer, autumn-winter, and endless limited edition capsule collections. They are operating on a fast fashion schedule but charging luxury prices. When you force a luxury supply chain to produce at global scale, season after season, something has to give, and that something is usually quality control. Across forums, TikTok, YouTube, and resale communities, more buyers are documenting the same frustration. Crooked stitching, misaligned logos, asymmetrical flaps, peeling glazing, and products that simply don't feel like they should cost thousands of dollars. These are errors that once would have been caught and discarded. Today, too many of them are boxed up and sold anyway. One of the most notorious examples involves Louis Vuitton and the glazing issue. The glazing is the protective edge paint applied to the sides of the leather. Traditionally, this was a meticulous process of burnishing and sealing. But in certain production runs, particularly between 2012 and 2016, many customers reported LV bags with edges that became sticky, melted, or bled onto their clothes. The issue became so widely reported among customers and repair communities that it turned into a symbol of the problem. Even the most famous luxury names were no longer immune to quality scandals. When enough luxury customers report the same kind of failure, it stops feeling like an isolated defect and starts feeling like a warning sign. Luxury ateliers have become very expensive factories, churning out products designed to look good on Instagram, not necessarily to last a lifetime. The focus has shifted from the product's lifespan to the product's launch. Here is what makes no logical sense. While more questions were being raised about materials, labor, and supply chains, the prices didn't stabilize. They exploded. Between 2019 and 2024, inflation in the United States was roughly 25%. In that exact same 5-year period, the price of a Chanel medium classic flat bag went from $5,800 to $10,800. That is an 86% increase. Luxury handbag prices outpacing normal inflation by more than 3 times. And that isn't some accidental side effect of rising costs. In luxury, the price itself has become part of the theater. The higher the number climbs, the more the customer is supposed to believe the object must be more rare, more special, more exceptional. The shock becomes the strategy. A 4-figure increase is framed as proof of status, not a question mark. And that is where the psychology becomes so important. Because once price is being used to manufacture desirability, it stops being evidence of quality. It becomes a branding tool. So what exactly are you paying for? If the hardware is less precious, if the materials feel less substantial, and if the supply chain is less transparent, where is that extra $5,000 going? More and more, you are paying for the world around the product, not just the product itself. You are paying the rent for their massive flagship stores on the Avenue Montaigne and Fifth Avenue. You are paying for the multi-million-dollar celebrity ambassador contracts. You are paying for the influencers sitting front row at Paris Fashion Week, flown in first class and gifted the very bag you are saving up to buy. The product has become secondary. The bag is a souvenir of the marketing campaign. But the corporate executives made one massive miscalculation. They underestimated the intelligence of the consumer. For years, the luxury industry operated behind a veil of secrecy. The internet has ripped that veil away. Look at the explosion of the cut-open trend on YouTube and TikTok. Creators like Tanner Leatherstein, a leather expert named Volkan Yilmaz, have built massive followings by taking a razor blade to brand new $2,000 luxury bags and exposing what is actually inside: the leather, the lining, the reinforcements, the construction, and sometimes the uncomfortable gap between price and material value. He is showing the world the spreadsheet in real time, and consumers are acting on what they see. According to Bain & Company, luxury handbag sales are down nearly 10% from their 2023 peak, roughly $8 billion in annual spending that has simply left designer stores. Those shoppers didn't disappear. They moved. Sales on resale platform The Real Real are up 20% since 2023, and searches for vintage bags jumped 131% in a single year. This rebellion is taking 2 distinct forms. First, a massive flight to the vintage market. Consumers are actively seeking out pre-2008 Chanel or 1990s Hermès, not because it's cheaper, but because it was made before the modern margin game took over. The numbers confirm it. Hermès Kelly bags now sell on The Real Real at an average of 50% above their original retail price. The older bags are not just nostalgic. Many buyers now believe they were better made, more distinctive, and more worth the money. Second, there is a pivot toward independent craftsmanship. Buyers are taking their $3,000 and giving it to unknown, highly skilled artisans who actually stitch the bags by hand rather than handing it to a conglomerate to fund their next celebrity campaign. They are choosing substance over status. They are voting with their wallets. Luxury is, at its core, an agreement. It is an unspoken contract between the brand and the buyer. The buyer agrees to pay an irrational, exorbitant amount of money. In exchange, the brand agrees to provide absolute perfection, uncompromising quality, and a piece of a dream. But in too many cases, that contract has started to feel broken. The prices stayed irrational. The marketing stayed beautiful. But the proof behind the promise became harder to see. Hermès proved it doesn't have to be this way, and honestly, that is what makes the rest of the story feel even more disappointing. One brand, one workshop, one artisan at a time, and they are now the most valuable luxury company in Europe. The rest chose the spreadsheet, and as the edges melt and the hardware tarnishes, the curtain has been pulled back, and we can all see the accountants pulling the levers. The question is no longer whether the luxury industry has changed. The question is for us. When do we stop paying for a logo that can no longer justify the quality of the product? And when do we finally admit that the dream they are selling us might be just a very expensive scam? Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.